Now, this story all centers around an inmate named Steve Higginbotham. That's right, Higginbotham. So you know it's going to be a doozy. In 2016, Stephen Higginbotham was moved onto my cell block. He was placed in a cell with two other inmates, and one of those inmates was a guy that I talked to daily, every single day for hours at a time. We would play chess, we would play cards, we would just hang out, trade stories, and just small talk, pass the time. So I was in this guy's cell a lot. In fact, I have a picture of myself in this cell, and when you learn the story behind this inmate, Stephen Higginbotham, this picture becomes a little bit chilling. Now, on the outside, Stephen Higginbotham was just your average old man in prison. He was friendly, kept to himself. You know, he wasn't a big guy. He wasn't some grizzled convict. He was more just of a frail older man, and you know, he liked to keep to himself and didn't bother anybody. He always liked to lay up there in his top bunk, and he would just read books. But most of all, he loved to just look through his old photo albums. Yes, you can get kind of these generic photo albums on the commissary, the canteen, and it's a great place to put the pictures that your loved ones send you in the mail. So he had stacks and stacks of these photo albums, and that's how he liked to pass his time. Harmless enough. But as the weeks go by, I believe we got a tip about what Stephen Higginbotham was actually in prison for. And it's weird because you usually don't see people with these kinds of charges in the general population area. They like to house these guys who have these child molestation type charges, like he did. They like to group them together so there's no risk of them getting hurt and beaten and injured by of course, all the other inmates who are not going to be okay with that. The smartest thing for the staff to do, whose job it is to protect these guys, is let's put them all together. You know, who's going to care what they did? They all did the same thing. So it was very odd to see this guy, and who knows if it was done on purpose. I don't know how this man ended up there, but of course we got on a contraband cell phone, looked him up, and to this day you can still pull up his file on SCDC. He'll be there for the rest of his life, and he's still there now. So we pulled up his file, and of course this is what we see. Just a list, charge after charge, of sickening, awful, disturbing crimes. So, of course, we are shocked, first of all, and we are, of course, we're fired up. We're angry. What is your first thought? Probably the first thought you're thinking, man, something needs to happen to this guy. Okay, now here's the problem with that, though. These guys with these child molestation charges, they're notorious for snitching. If something happens to them, you better believe it. You're going to solitary confinement for it. These guys have they're never going to have an ounce of respect amongst these other inmates. So why would they draw the line at, keeping that last bit of respect by not snitching? Honestly, being a known snitch or very likely to snitch is probably their greatest protection, because as in this case, it kept the guys from just immediately doing something to him. A day or two passes, and everyone's really trying to weigh the options of what to do with this guy. Of course, we don't want him in that cell. We don't want him in here. We don't want him anywhere around us. We want something to happen to this guy, but at the same time, if something happens to him, by now he's seen this cellmate of his, who I'm close with, and he's close with a lot of people in that cell block. He's seen his cell phone. He's seen his cigarettes. This guy has contraband in his room, and these things are precious to him, especially this cell phone. That's a very precious item to an inmate, so you don't want to lose it. This guy might tell on that. And if this guy gets beat up and just brutally injured, then there's going to be officers. The first place they're going to look is in that cell, and what happened here, who did this, and was it the cellmate? They're going to have to come in there and pack up all his stuff. They're going to take him out of there, and then the officers are going to come back in there in that cell and tear that whole cell up and packing up all his property, to move him wherever they're going to put him, now that he obviously can't stay in that area. So upon doing that, they're probably going to stumble across some contraband. So everyone's trying to figure out what we're going to do here. And Stephen Higginbotham makes a big mistake on his end, and this mistake would lead to, you could call it the straw that broke the camel's back, as far as everyone just holding back on doing something to this guy. If you recall, his photo albums that he loves so much. They're so precious to him. He just loves to sit up there in that top bunk and flip through his photo albums. Well, we knew, we're starting to pay attention to this guy a little more and keep an eye on him. And we notice something strange that he does. Every time he goes to the shower, he takes one of these specific photo albums with him to the shower, which is a little weird. So, we're wondering what's up with that. And one day, he is looking through this photo album, and then he's gathering his stuff to go to the shower, his towel, his soap, all that, and I guess he left or forgot, or maybe he was just so comfortable that he didn't see any big reason not to just leave his photo album out in the open right there in the middle of his bunk. So he goes to the shower. He's obviously going to be gone for about 30 minutes. And I tell you, we got curious. What is in this photo album that he's always looking through? What is in this photo album that he feels the need to bring with him to the shower almost every time he goes? So we grab it and we open it. And it was shocking. He had constructed these collages. I mean, pages and pages and pages of collages that he had created from cut out pieces of magazines. And yes, you have access to many, many magazines in prison. They're allowed to send you magazines, people on the outside. You can even get a subscription ordered to where, they just don't want like hardcover, hardback books being sent to you directly from your loved ones to where you could hide something in it. Paperback books directly from a company like Amazon or something, or a magazine subscription where it's not going to your loved one, it's coming straight from a company. So there's, why would there be any contraband in it? They allow that. So it's nothing to have magazines coming to yourself. It's nothing to find stacks. I mean, people will have magazines for 2 years and just be tired of it. They're cleaning their cell out. Hey, I'm getting rid of a bunch of stuff I don't need anymore. My cell's a little cluttered. Boom, throw a stack of 20, 25 magazines out there on the bench. Hey, free to take, whatever. It's nothing to come across. All types of magazine, People magazine, whatever. Point is, he had created these pictures and these scenes and scenarios, if you see where I'm going with this. And he, grown women and grown men, grown women's bodies with the head, snipped off of the picture and replaced with a much younger person's head. The torso cut separately from legs, separately from arms, so he could glue them and position them into these certain positions and scenes and whatever he wanted, whatever he was creating on this page, this collage. I mean, he even went so far. I mean, I saw he'd cut out a full-grown doctor. He would make, it's like it was art to him he was creating, and he would create a doctor who was sitting there with a created and constructed young boy. And he had cut out, it's like the stuff you see in the serial killer movies, like it's something you would find in a serial killer's apartment, like a constructed sentences made out of individual letters cut out of the magazine that spelled out, "Always a tasty snack." I still remember that phrase that was on that page. It said, "Always a tasty snack." And we're just looking back at each other like, what? Man, we were sickened. It was sickening. So we close it up, put it back on the bed. Let me tell you something. Nobody cared anymore. There was no more holding back. And that night, I think we all passed around some prison wine. Everybody got drunk, and they beat that guy bad. They beat him in the cell. They beat him out of the cell. They beat him all over the top floor. They beat him. Yeah, they beat him. And of course, the guards came in there and pulled him out. Come on, guys. You should have known this was going to happen. Like, maybe we didn't know his charges, but y'all knew, and y'all knew that we would find out. But anyways, they pulled him out, and of course, they come back about an hour or so later to get the guy, one of the main guys, because he was still out there drunk, in the main area, just being wild and kind of giving himself away. And so they're coming to get him. I'm sure they were planning to come get more sooner or later. And at that point, it wasn't the whole cell block, but generally everyone. I mean, there was 10, 15 people all come together and just showed him, hey, look. Just showed him the book and like, this is what he's got. He's got more. He's got several photo albums in there. This is what we saw, and that's why it happened. So if you want to take us away for that, if you want to really put these people on solitary for that, so be it. But take a look at that for yourself. And all I know is not a single person except Stephen Higginbotham was taken out of that cell block that day. They never came and got anybody, but they definitely got all his stuff. And I know that they held all those photo albums. That he, of course, didn't get those back, and never saw Stephen Higginbotham again. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you're not subscribed, please do, because I will be back soon with another video.